Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to thank everybody for coming and participating. We're interested in hearing your comments regarding the 4 charges that the Board of Selectmen gave to the Charter Revision Committee. We have Ralph Williams and Terry Schmidt here. I think I see only 2 members you have, Charter Commission.
A couple others have talked about trying to make it, but
Okay.
so far he's stuck with us.
I'll just reiterate those 4 charges. The first one was, there's Andy Rocket, the chairman. The 4 charges we gave to the Charter Revision Committee were: shall the role of the town clerk become an appointive rather than an elective position? Shall the town remain guided by an elected Board of Selectmen? Or should we move to a town manager form of government? Shall the zoning and planning boards be combined into one appointed board? And the last charge is, shall the number of members of the zoning commission be revised? I'd like to officially thank Andy and Ralph and Terry and the other members of their commission for their yeoman work. So we'd like to start the meeting in terms of getting your input. I do ask that you identify yourself and your address for the record. We have another meeting to go to at 7 o'clock, so if we could keep your comments precise. So it's open. Whoever wants to make comments, please.
Jim Welch, Mountain Road.
Okay.
Everything, I think I understand a bit through the documentation stuff, and my only comments are about the town manager versus the elected selectmen, and I had some questions, not reservations, but more questions. What comes to mind is, what is that going to give the residents of the town of Somers more than we get from our elected officials? We have professional staff, regardless of whether you look at recreation or finance or tax or assessing, or it's just, you go through, we have professional people. So I think what we're looking for is a board of selectmen that can manage those. And basically maybe what the town manager gets for us. Town managers, are we trying to emulate a bigger town? I don't know that we are, and I don't know what that gains us anyway. What we have is people participate, and everybody at this table, your door is always open. So if there's a question or something like that, or there's a suggestion, it's easy enough to get to the people. If you get a professional, Somers is a small town. And regardless of how you define that, I think, I'm not sure what the percentage is of our residents that are actually provided housing by the Connecticut State Department of Corrections. So the number of people who are participating in town is somewhat under that number, to Tim's way of thinking. If we look, and I didn't write anything down, so take this with a grain of salt. My recollection is that Enfield, Ellington, Oxford, and possibly Stafford Springs have had town managers leave in 2018. And I'm thinking, why, if the town of Somers is not the size of just Enfield as an example, why give somebody a stepping stone to move elsewhere? Why start with us, knowing that we can see their departure as much as we can anything else? Maybe we get a couple of years of good management. That's all well and good. I just don't know that we don't have better than satisfactory, good to very good management with the Board of Selectmen versus the Board of Selectmen, expanded Board of Selectmen, and the town manager. So with the turnover in those positions and stuff, I just have to question what value is going to be added.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you, Tim. Ralph?
Ralph Williams, 42 Springfield Road. I'm the Vice Chairman of the Charter Commission. Just wanted to clarify one point, gentlemen here. We did not propose a town manager. We were asked to consider proposing a town manager. We decided the town was a sufficiently manageable size that what was needed was a town administrative officer who could basically be someone to whom the department heads could report, could coordinate things, that we wanted to keep an elected first selectman and a board of selectmen, although expanding the size of it, and to keep the executive responsibilities, the decision making, the citizen outreach and citizen response connection that we have now on that score. Basically, we were confronting a case where we have a town manager, a first selectman's job, which has become a full-time job and then some, and to the point where it's sometimes much more than a 40-hour week, and it doesn't allow for a lot of the, frankly, the politicking that is necessary in terms of dealing with the state government, with the legislators and whatnot. We wanted to have a person who was the day-to-day administrative overseer of the town departments. And effectively, we've been moving in that direction for a while. We just wanted to make it formal and still have an elected board of selectmen. We did not propose council manager government. We considered it because we were asked to consider it. We decided that that was not something that was appropriate for a town of this size. Certainly not at this time. Well, for a town of this size, period, because if the town ever gets any bigger, that'll be somebody else's headache, not ours. But that's not what we proposed. So we never suggested a manager government. We did suggest a full-time administrator who could be the person the departments went to. So the first selectman basically could deal with the question of whether or not we're getting enough state funding, how we deal with the regional agencies and whatnot, without wondering about what broke down at the Public Works Department. That was our idea.
Thank you, Ralph.
Steve Getman, 19 School Street, Somersville. I'm also a member of the Somers Water Pollution Control Authority.
Hi, Steve.
I agree with the idea of having a town clerk being appointed rather than elected because of the technical expertise needed to fill the job. As far as expanding the selectmen from 3 to 5, that may very well also make sense. The town administrator who would take care of all the day-to-day functions, I agree with that, but I do agree with Tim that this would be a stepping stone for someone to move on to a larger town. And we might just be a stepping stone, have somebody for a year or 2 or 3, and then boom, they're gone and have to do a new search. So that's a concern. And lastly, planning and zoning, I believe they should be combined, especially since we have a lack of volunteers to serve on boards. Those two are critical. They can be very easily combined, and bringing people up to speed with planning and zoning is kind of like bringing people up to speed with the Water Pollution Control Authority. There are certain things you need to know, over several different meetings or years to figure out what's going on. So that's my input. Thank you. And I'd also like to thank the commission for doing all their work, and we appreciate it.
Thank you, Steve. Anybody else like to make some comments, suggestions, criticisms, advice?
If I could make one more observation.
Sure, Ralph.
Standing again, Ralph Williams. It's funny you mentioned that it'll be a stepping stone, an entry level. As you may know, I've been the news editor of the Journal Inquirer for a long time. Guess what? We're a small newspaper. We get a lot of people who are entry level reporters. And do they last more than a couple of years? Some do. Morons like me last 4 decades. But a lot of them go in 2 years. Guess what? In the meantime, they do a crackerjack job because they want that line on the resume. They want to show that they've done a good job. So will there be turnover? There might well be. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to get anything
That can be today in any position.
necessarily substandard at all.
I didn't say it might be substandard. I'm just saying this would be a stepping stone, and point well taken.
Yes.
Andy,
Thank you, Andy Rocket, 20 Blue Ridge Mountain Drive.
and the chairman of the
Yes, sir.
Charter
Thank you.
Division
How
Committee.
very kind. I don't know that anybody's comments are wrong. There's no right answer to that, any of these questions, as we ourselves discovered. We bandied them back and forth many, many times, and we ebbed and flowed and where we were. I think there are legitimate opposing viewpoints on each one of these. With respect to the stepping stone thing, I don't know the answer to that. I think it may happen. If it does, I agree with Ralph that people don't do a stepping stone and come in and do a crappy job. They come in and do a great job, to try and make it a stepping stone. But on the other hand, the Bolton town administrative officer that we talked to has been there over 40 years. So, I don't know. With respect to the closeness to the town, that was in essence the issue that we came up with in terms of the governance. That if you get somebody professional, it'll be removed, one step removed from citizens like me and you being involved in the town. And that's why we proposed that the first selectman remain the chief executive officer as defined in the statute. We would still elect that selectman. They'd still be responsible to us, the voters and citizens. And yet, we also saw just extreme knowledge required of all the kinds of regulations and statutes under which we operate. And we asked this at our public meeting, is there anybody here in any business who has not had more and more regulations put upon them? We all have. And I think probably all the selectmen can verify that alone requires extreme dedication on the part of the first selectman, and that's the primary reason we want it to be professionalized, just because of the changing nature of the government under which we operate. With respect to planning and zoning, we all are volunteers in this town for the most part. We know it's very hard to get people to participate in these committees. You, the three selectmen, are primarily charged with calling people up. It's like when we see Kathy Devlin on the phone, it's, where am I going to serve now? So again, there's no right answer to that. And yet, we thought that in the main, it's been working pretty well, arguably. We were concerned that if it were combined, what all the towns in our investigation reported to us is that the planning falls by the wayside, as you get so consumed when it's a combined board. That's what they reported to us, and we're I guess I would describe it to sound a little lawyerly, not unhappy with the way things are going, and that's what the town pretty much said to us. They weren't thrilled. There's things like efficiencies involved and getting people involved, things like that, but in the main, it's going okay, and we felt it critical. So we also discussed at our last meeting, we'll take no personal offense at any comments, nor whatever the board does. The board asked us to do a job, we did the job, we'll all be happy together afterwards, so don't worry about hurting our feelings.
Very good.
Thank you, Andy, and again, I want to acknowledge the fine work you guys did. Thankless in certain cases. Any additional comments that people would like to make? Okay.
Meeting adjourned. Okay, should we move the hearing to a close or what?
Yeah. Make a motion?
I
Close
so
it.
move.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming, really. I wrote everything down. Thank you.
I don't stay.
No,
Good.
we can't meet until Thank you so much, Mark. Good to see you.
Very good comments.
Kim?
Yeah.
You have to wait till 7.
What? No, immediately following
Yeah,
the
it says
public hearing.
immediately following.
So she's
Because
gonna
of course,
take it.
half a mile from home.
Huh?
It's raining.
Yeah. Yeah, we're just gonna, did I get it?
There.
Speaker?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you want to call him Saturday.
Like if you start dialing the number.
What, this?
Dial the number.
Yeah, great.
I just want to say hi to you guys.
Thank you, how's everything? Good?
Going well.
How's it going with you?
Have
What do
you?
you think?
Yeah.
So far, pretty good. Well, actually, I met him Saturday night as he was walking his dog, as we were trying to look for one of our basset hounds that had snuck out. So we had a chat for about 20 minutes. He's very nice. Seems
Yeah,
very nice.
that's the impression I got.
Yeah.
Did you hear that the dog went to mass?
Or somebody's cell phone?
Stay. God
Can we
bless
call
you.
yourself, this is intermittent right now? Oh, I gotta stop.
Do you have a meeting coming up now or something?
Yeah,
Few of us.
immediately following the public hearing, we're gonna have a regular board of meeting.
Board of Selectmen meeting, okay, all right. Okay.
Yeah, I was impressed with this the first time I met him and heard his sermon. I thought he had the right tone.
Just a sidebar,
Oh, okay.
2 days with the dump, with the landfill being open, is not gonna fly. I don't think.
See, now I got it.
There's a lot of pushback, I'm pushing back.
Do what we can.
I know.
Please use.
You understand, we had to, this was during the winter season,
Mhm.
before anything else happened, we had to make a budget, we had to cut every department.
What about
So
that
now,
part?
we can't, we don't have the money for it, but we're talking about
No?
going for efficiency.
All right, I have to use somebody's cell phone.
Do what you have to do.
I apologize.
Like it or not,
This keeps
try to live
going
with it.
out. I think
For a
this is
while.
wrong.
He's gonna keep
Take
getting
care
cut
of
off.
yourself.
I'm still already.
Yes, Dave.
I'm enjoying the grandkids.
How are your animals? Oh,
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
so glad.
No, the grandkids are here for another 10 days.
Oh, that's good.
Got a sorry to hear about Buffett.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, no, we went.
You
Good.
gotta come over.
All right. Yeah.
I'm just.
I'll come over and have a beer anytime.
Yeah.
We've got 6 cars in our family, you know. It's a couple of junkers. 2 are in the show. My sons have 1 each.
Yeah, we're gonna
My
have
wife
to
has
use him, we're having a
I'm
landline.
late for the meeting. Had to go out and pump up tires on a
Hey,
bike
Tim.
and ride a bike down here.
Okay, why don't we put you on the speaker?
No, Terry's gonna give me a ride.
Yeah,
Thanks.
let's not break here.
But let's
Okay?
connect. I'm
Yeah.
around, so stop all and we'll connect.
Yeah,
On your way
I'll put you
home.
on the speaker.
and it has to be near the
Sitting near the
microphone.
microphone too, so his comments can be heard.
Can you hear us, Tim?
I can, yep.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
I'm sorry, everybody.
That's a cool little
We're
spot.
gonna start over.
Yeah, cool little spot.
Yeah,
I
I'm
like
sorry.
it.
I just found out.
Because I'm going to,
Have a good
Yeah,
evening.
you are, you
Nice
are.
to see you
Yep.
again.
Close in
thank
town.
you.
See you guys. Thanks for your time. Hey, good, how are you?
Take care, take care.
Hi, Terry.
I gotta keep my
Thanks,
eyes on
Ralph.
Terry. She's my ride. I'm not. I'm sorry, Andy, I can't. Not my turn.
Hey, Bud, tell Andy I said hi and thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I will, I'll tell him, he just stepped outside, but I'll tell him.
Well, it's funny, the video's like 20 seconds behind the voice.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Board of Selectmen meeting on Thursday, July 26th at 6:17. All members present, Tim Patricus by telephone, Kathy Devon, Bud Noor, Mike Marinaccio, Kim LaFleur, and Brian Wissinger. Opportunity to add agenda items.
No, I'm fine.
I would like to add the item of the Public Health Director.
Oh, okay.
Any other items?
Bud, I'd just like to thank Kim for sending me all the attachments we'll need tonight. So thanks for that, Kim. I appreciate it.
You got it.
Okay, Public Health Director. We interviewed a number of candidates, and Steve and I have come to the conclusion that we like this gentleman, Luigi Sartorbi. I think everybody's got copies of his resume,
I do.
which is pretty impressive. And I'd like to have a discussion about that and if you're in agreement, give me permission to offer him a letter of employment. The requirements.
I'll make a motion that we support the first selectman's recommendation so that we can get it on the table and discuss.
Second, now we
Okay.
can go to discussion.
Discussion.
Okay, I would say since the requirements now are for a master's in public health, it's important for us to get there. There's a big survey right now, Tim, that we just received. It's called SHPPS, I believe. And it's looking where the state is trying to take us. And I think a leader with a master's in public health can probably keep us the way we are if we give him our priorities and we have him share those requirements that are coming in from the state to me. Okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Yeah, the requirements are a master's in public health, not required as an MD, but if you're an MD, you must have a degree also in public health. So this gentleman is not an MD, but he's got an extensive background, with the state, various private industries, and all the credentials necessary, I think, for what we need.
Yeah,
Plus, he can be our advocate for this regional health concept, too.
I do too.
And I'm presuming he's got a network of professional associates that he can tap into should we need experience beyond what's on his resume.
That's
agree.
the key. Plus, he worked for a number of the people involved in some of these health initiatives. So, I
Excellent.
liked him.
Just a quick question, Bud. With his residence being in Lebanon, what are the requirements of being in Summers, and how available is he when we need him to be here?
Dr.
1 to
Siegel.
10 scale.
I'm sorry, Tim. Dr. Siegel was with us for 41 years. I think he lives up in.
He lives in Enfield. No, he lives in Suffield. Dr. Segul lives in Suffield.
Right.
Yep.
And he would come, but he was extremely accommodating if there was a need, like when we had that bed bug
Yep.
infestation. He was here, and he also did an awful lot of advice over the phone. So when you need them, I think we just have to do it that way. This is the way we can afford it, I would say.
Yeah, I addressed this with him, Tim. He will be on call. But
Okay.
I have to tell you that basically most of these issues are taken care of by Steve Jacobs.
Great. Yep.
But this is a requirement by state statute, so I was impressed with him. He's got the background, he's got the willingness, he's enthusiastic, he's young. So I'm in favor of this, but any additional discussions?
Nope.
No.
Call for the vote. All in favor?
Make a
All
motion?
the motion's been made and seconded. Well, let's call for a vote. I say aye.
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 Okay, motion passes. I will draft a letter and send you copies of it for his employment. We're flexible in terms of the timing. Dr. Siegel said he'll assist us until we find somebody and/or help us with additional training.
That would be good.
Okay?
Because he
Thanks,
knows
bud.
what
Good.
we're like,
He's super nice.
Yeah.
That's good.
Luigi.
Yeah, very nice guy.
I also sent both to you and Kathy the memorandum of understanding for the 2 new school resource officers that we're hiring,
Yep.
Jay Gershowitz and Greg Jones. And they're due to be sworn in probably the 6th of August.
August 6th, yeah.
So I would like your opinion or discussion in regards to the MOU, which was drafted in conjunction with the state police resident trooper and our police administrator, and discussions with other towns.
I read it through before. I had it, I received it from Kim and I read it through. I agree with it. I believe that the memorandum of understanding will fit the needs of the state. And I don't believe that that the oversight should be other than with the town. I'm talking about the Board of Selectmen, but more specifically with our police officer and our administrator down there. So I think this one works especially well. Now, I shouldn't have done that. I should have made a motion first. I'm sorry. I move to accept the memorandum of agreement between the Town of Summers, Summers Resident State Trooper's Office, and the Town of Summers School District / Administration.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
No, you're in discussion.
Just a little bit more discussion
Now
if we
I
can,
could.
but
Now I'll discuss it. You heard what I said, just move it back into space, but I really believe that this is a good memorandum of understanding. I didn't find any flaws. Did you, Tim?
I didn't find any flaws. Has anyone discussed it with the superintendent of schools just so he knows our position and what we've agreed to here?
Well, the next step would be to send this on to Carl Andalina for his imprimatur.
Okay.
I will then forward it as, once we approve it as a Board of Selectmen, to Brian Sepla. But
Yep.
the memorandum was written in such a way that responsibility of the SROs comes through the Board of Selectmen and not the school system.
Right.
Yeah, and primary responsibility for safety of everything around town falls under our purview through the police
Yeah.
department regardless. So I'm fine with that. I just want to make sure that
Yes.
that he supports that position with his administrators and staff, and that we're all on board. So
Yes.
that said, I'm fine with what I've seen.
Yep.
And it's a dynamic document. If we see a need to add some additional items, we can do that in conjunction with the Board of Education.
But we need to get this back to the state, and they're pretty much,
They'll turn it over.
they'll turn it over, but they'll definitely want it with the Board of Selectmen and the town like that, because that's how the state works.
Yeah.
And we're actually ones that pay the bills anyway.
Correct.
So is this something that needs a signature on it, or we send it to Carl first and then
I'm
get
gonna send it
signatures?
to Carl.
Does it ever get signed? I guess that's my question.
Yeah, I'll send it to Carl. Once he gives his imprimatur's approval, then I'll forward on to both of you.
What I think Tim is saying that I would agree with is that in a completion of this MOA, at the bottom, there needs to be signatures and certification. So once you pass it on to Carl,
Both the Board of
make
Ed,
sure
Board of
that's
Selectmen,
happening.
And
Okay.
That
probably
it's
the
been
state,
signed
and
and
probably
it's,
the
in
state.
addition to the state.
the state needs to sign it and the town needs to sign it. And then
Okay.
you can pass
I'll
it on.
confirm that with.
So Kathy, I guess I'd ask you to amend your motion that says we authorize the Board of Selectmen to sign this in its current form after approval from Attorney Landolina.
Okay.
And if there are substantial changes, we'd want to revisit it at the next Selectmen's meeting.
All right.
So if
Whatever
you're
you
okay
say.
with that, I'd second that amendment, but I think, we need to have it signed. I don't want it sitting around unsigned.
All right, so what we're asking, the amendment would read then, that after this has been through the review of the attorney, that we officially sign this document, make sure the state.
Well, we can authorize Bud to sign it. We don't need to review it
Okay,
again.
so
If there's no substantive changes, I'm okay with Bud signing it as is.
Okay,
I just want to make sure that it gets signed by somebody, but if there are significant changes that Landolina suggests, that then we bring it back to discussion. Does that help?
Yeah.
okay. So we'll authorize Bud Nor to sign it once the decision has come through the attorney. I think we have to stipulate then that I would like it to go to the state before it's disseminated, because their signature needs to be on it as well, Tim.
All right, so Kim, what do you have for a motion at this point?
Well, based on Carl Landolina's approval, you're making a motion to authorize the first selectman to sign the MOU if there's no major changes with the wording in the MOU. And
Okay.
and that's basically where I stand, because then it's got to go to the state. Well, I would send it to the state first, and then and make sure they're okay with it, and then Bud can sign it, and then send it to
Carl Andolina.
Carl.
Oh,
what?
Brian.
Brian. I always want to call him Carl. Sorry. So.
Okay,
And Kathy,
we
somebody
okay,
from the
Tim?
state signs it also then?
I don't know that. I have to confirm that with Kim. I think it has to go through legals. I'm not sure. So, but it does have to go to that department.
right.
When you say the state, you mean the Department of Public Safety?
Yes.
Yes, it has to go to the
Sorry.
Department of Public
Yeah.
Safety.
Their
Dora.
legal
State
department.
Department of Public Safety.
So, because it could be amendment to the state
Right.
trooper contract. So I don't know that yet.
Right.
Because Kim would be able to probably answer that. I apologize.
All right, so there seem to be a few question marks around it. Should we bring it back in 2 weeks, or does that compromise the timeline that we're under?
Well, they're starting on August 6th, so
I don't,
I don't think there's a lot of
yeah.
question
I
marks.
don't anticipate a problem,
I don't
Tim.
either.
We've vetted this through other towns.
I don't anticipate a problem, but I just want to make sure that I understand what we're voting on tonight. So I think what I heard was, we've authorized you to go ahead and sign this if there's no substantive changes. Where I'm lost is what happens next. Does it go to somebody else for a signature before it gets filed? I'm unclear. Sorry.
That's okay.
We'll
once-
find out.
Well, it's gotta go to Carl Landolina first.
Right.
Correct, yep.
Okay, and when it comes
So let's say
back,
Carl approves it with no changes.
right, and I
Okay.
don't think he will, and then
Okay.
Kim's gonna send it off to the state police, the legals department, just to get it blessed. I
Okay.
don't know if that requires a signature or not, but I'm sure it does, because it'll be an amendment or an appendix, you know what I mean, like an
To
additional.
the resident state trooper
Yeah.
contract.
So,
Sorry, I'm a little thick.
That's okay,
Needs
but
to
they
be
might
signed by
ask-
Bud at
but-
that point, or by someone at the state.
I didn't hear
I
that?
didn't hear what you said, Tim.
My question was, Carl approves it, and then you said it gets sent off to the state.
Yeah, they're legal.
I'm unsure does Bud sign it before it goes to the state, or after it comes back to the
No,
state with
no,
someone
we'll have
else's
Kim do
signature on
that.
it?
No, I would have them sign it first, and then have Bud sign it.
Excellent.
But Kim can
Okay.
handle that part of it. She
I
has a
think if we
contact
get it to
there.
Kim and she sends it on to the state, what it should be then, that once the state approves it, Bud would sign it and
Right.
then pass it on.
Provided that there's no
Yeah,
substantive
correct.
changes between
Provided there's
tonight
no
and that moment that it
substantive
comes back
change.
signed by the state, I'm fine with that. And that's what I want to vote on. So
Okay.
I'm fine authorizing Bud to sign it unless something changes that we need to know about.
I gotcha.
Correct.
You know, that's all.
Yeah.
All right.
Got it?
All right.
Hate to be a pain in the neck, but you know,
You're
that's
not
me.
fine. No, it's
No.
good. I get it.
We get it. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Dun, dun, dun.
Transfer station discussion.
Good luck.
Well,
I just want to make one statement, okay? We acknowledge that the citizens' concerns and comments about the transfer station, and we're reviewing all of our options. I think it's important to point out that increasing the days and the hours and the corresponding cost is a budgetary decision, and that cannot be decided by the Board of Selectmen without seeking the Board of Finance approval. The fiscal 2019 budget that was adopted was based on the transfer station being open 2 days per week, and increasing the days would require additional funds and appropriations, and we will need Board of Finance approval. I'd like Mike Marinaccio to add his comments about the budget as it relates to the transfer station and the so-called windfall of $1.1 million and the implication of that for the transfer station.
read it loudly.
Mike?
Yeah, there has been a recurring theme in letters written to the newspaper, letters written to you and public officials here, in the social media. In fact, I had someone stop by my office today who paid their taxes and referred to the windfall, which led me this afternoon to just really want to clarify this, because at this point, this windfall has just reached mythical proportions. It does not exist. There is no windfall. So I'm going to try to explain why that is. And if you don't get everything I say on this, you can go to the town website where it's posted, and I believe it's called the message from the CFO regarding the windfall. So it's out there, and then you can read it at your leisure. So the central points here, which have been raised, is that the town budgeted 7.6 million, or in that area, 7.696138 to be exact. And the state aid awarded was higher than that. And basically the higher award was $1.1 million. It's actually 1.128184. So that amount, that 1.1, has been characterized as the windfall that the town has. And the questions that are surrounding that windfall are, where did the windfall go? What is it being used for? Now that you have it, why aren't you giving it back? Why aren't you lowering the mill rate? Why aren't you reducing the transfers? Why are you reducing the transfer station hours while using money to open it up? So, and then the town has been budgeting incorrectly. So, really, I want us to set the record straight on all this. Last month, I did provide in the Board of Finance regular meeting a reconciliation that showed what makes up that difference. What makes up that 1.1 million? What's the difference between that and what was budgeted by the town? But in order to understand this windfall question, you have to first understand the following, and I'm going to lay them out. First of all, not all state aid goes into the town's general fund budget. There are what is called TAR grants, that's Town Aid Road, and municipal project grants. And by state statute, those monies are designated specifically for road maintenance. And we in town deposit those monies in the Town Aid Road Fund. And so any road maintenance that is done is really not taxed to the taxpayers. The money is taken from that TAR account and the expenses go in that TAR account. So if we're paving X amount of miles of road, it comes out of TAR funds. So those TAR funds are not in the general fund, but they're in that state number of 8.8 million. Another thing that's in the state number is LoCIP funding. That's CIP, which is a capital improvement funding, which is a ledger that the state keeps for us. And this year they awarded us in the neighborhood of 130,000 or so dollars, and they put the money in the ledger. We cannot touch that money until we apply to the state for a pre-approval on a project. They give us the go-ahead. We go then execute the project, and then we apply for a refund. So that money is not in our pocket. That money it sits out there waiting for an eligible project, a capital improvement project, which is passed by the Board of Finance and the CIP. And the next thing is that state aid amounts are estimates. They're not guaranteed. If you were to read the dialogue that's out there, you would think that the money is guaranteed to us by the state. It says specifically when we get it that the grants are estimates, and it can be cut or withheld from us during the year, like they were last year. The final point is that state aid is neither received in a lump sum amount, nor is it received at the beginning of the fiscal year. So here we are at the end of July, the beginning of August. We're 1 month into our new fiscal year, and I as CFO can tell you that we have not received 1 penny of state aid yet. And we probably won't until the end of August, maybe September, receive our first down payment, our first payment. And state aid does not come in a lump sum amount. So your 1.1 million, which is now essentially a lot less than 1.1 million, and I'll get into that, does not come as a lump sum. It comes in payments, like rental payments. And sometimes the state skips a rental payment on us, and sometimes they send us less than the rental payment we thought we were going to get. That happens throughout the year, and it doesn't end until the end of the fiscal year, which would be in June of 2019. So we don't have the money. So back up, the state number was 8.8. And if you took the TAR money and the Muni projects money and the LoCIP money, which I refer to the bonds for capital work, if you take those, which they don't belong in the general fund, and we're not budgeted in the general fund, you're talking about $454,000. And that leaves, out of that 1.1 million amount, that leaves the town with 675,000. So if that is our, I guess you could say that that's our windfall, but however, that money, 98% of that money, or 664,000, is an ECS grant, educational cost sharing grant. And so, and why do we have that difference in our budget? Well, initially when we budgeted, we took the governor's number, the governor's cut, and we budgeted it. because we didn't want to run into a situation like we did last year where we would come up short once the state started cutting us and then have to go out again for a mid-year tax increase, a supplemental increase. So we said, let's budget it at the governor's lower rate because he's as sly as a fox and he's probably going to get that lower rate. Well, lo and behold, the lawmakers overruled that and they restored the cuts and they gave us the higher amount. So that's why we have that $664,000 in ECS funding. Now, in the bill, in the budget bill that was passed by the legislature, there was a provision that said the governor cannot cut this during the year. He vetoed that. He vetoed that line item, vetoed that phrase. And essentially, the legislature never overrode that veto. So he retains the ability, his successor after this election retains the ability to cut that ECS budget anytime during this fiscal year that we're in right now. So I would fully expect that based on the condition of the state, at some point between now and next June, there'll be some form of state crisis which will then require us to get less money, will have us get less money. Now, I can't guarantee that, but I think conservative budgeting would say if there's a potential of that happening because it's happened in the past, it's best to have that cushion in place. So that eats up your entire 1.1 million. None of it is hidden. None of it's been received. And so while it appears we have that money, we don't. So there is no windfall. And like I said, funding is an estimate. It's not a guarantee. We don't have what we can't use. We can't use what we don't have. So if you have any questions on this, go to the website, read the document. Feel free to call me, call Brian Wissinger, Assistant Finance Director, and we'll explain that to you. But please, for once and for all, I really would like to put this behind us and let you know that we are budgeting the right way here, and there is no 1.1 million. So.
Thank you, Mike, and I want to reemphasize that point. We follow strict accounting principles here. We've been given awards regarding that. We're fiscally responsible, and I trust and hope that the people viewing this meeting today will take the time to educate themselves regarding this particular false narrative. And I can assure you that we treat your citizens' money as it would be our own.
If I could just add, remember we were preparing this budget in the midst of really what you said, Mike.
Yeah.
Following along with what the governor had done to us in the past.
Yes.
So that we wouldn't fall short. So every single department took large hits, and that's why it's budgeted like it is. So we can't make any decisions or any changes right now without going to the Board of Finance and asking for an appropriation.
Right.
So that's probably the next appropriate step if we choose to do that.
Yeah, and I'd like to add, Kathy, that the thing that I guess I'm not surprised, I'm frustrated with is that the open meetings that we had in January with limited participation by people in town to share their opinion with us really impeded our ability to make the decision that would best support what the citizen wanted. So had people come to those public hearings and to our budget planning sessions to express how passionate they were about the transfer station, we could have taken that into consideration. But I guess I'm a little frosted that Bud's at the barb end of the wire here being stung for a decision that wasn't his unilaterally. It was something that was recommended by the DPW. It went through the budget process. It was discussed at public meetings, and as a board we voted to what we understood to be the best interest of the citizens to take care of the fiscal responsibility we had to balance the budget, not encumber the citizens through surprise tax bill again in January of 2019. I think it's unfortunate that people are surprised when they pull up to the transfer station on a Sunday and see it closed with all the publicity we had on those meetings. And I guess I'm a little frosted as well that, we have roughly 4,500 households in the town of Summers. And if you look at the deficit that the transfer station brings to each citizen, every resident is supporting those residents who choose to access the transfer station. Now, for my wife and I, we use the transfer station 3 or 4 times a year when we've got brush or excess trash, but otherwise we pay curbside because that's what we've chosen to do. But, we all make choices. And when I consider the fact that our fire department lost Rescue 1 this year because we can't afford to keep the truck on the road, and that Bud and you and I, Kathy, are working to get the state to help us offset the cost of an additional emergency response vehicle due to the needs of the prison, and in an offset, if you will, to the pilot cuts. I'm frustrated that there's not more passion in the town about fire and emergency services, police services, road maintenance, and it's all about a transfer station that literally we cut 4 or 5 hours out of. I'm frustrated that people didn't make themselves available to what we made available to them. I'm frustrated that they're taking their anger out in I'm going to say an immature fashion, trying to position themselves for whatever they want to position themselves for. But the due diligence, the hard work, the effort that everybody's put into, and Mike, thank you again for once again going over this issue with the mythical windfall. People owe it to themselves to educate themselves before they speak publicly about an event or an issue or something that they're simply ignorant to. And you got a problem with that, folks? Give me a call. You know where I live. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much,
Thank you, Tim. I do want to make a comment, and that is we as citizens and voters have a responsibility to educate ourselves, okay? To separate fact from fiction and to basically understand what we're presenting here in terms of the numbers and the choices and the priorities we have to set. Having said that, we're not immune to the responses from the town citizens regarding this issue. And this is something I think we can take under consideration for the next budget cycle. Unfortunately, our hands are tied right now with a fixed budget and the anticipation of either cut funds or limited funds or maybe no funds. I don't know what's going to happen with the state. But I just want to make it certain that people take the responsibility to educate themselves regarding what Mike has put on the town website and hopefully on Facebook. And we are available to answer any questions you may have in that regard.
Thank you, Bob. That's well said.
Okay. Any other comments before we move on for approval of payments?
Where's the agenda?
All right.
No, none. Move to approve payments in the amount of $158,564.56.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion
Aye.
passes. Move for adjournment.
Want to forge my name on that thing?
No, we have a
I will
quorum.
extend power of attorney to whoever needs it to sign my name, or I can sign it Monday. You let me know.
No, we have a quorum here.
Okay, thanks.
Quorum will sign.
I'm glad you stayed on for the call, Tim, and I hope your trip home is a safe one.
I just hope the Southwest figures out how to get a flight in the air and back down safely. It's been incredible. My flight out here was actually delayed because there were scrapes on the forward cargo door, and we literally had to wait while they painted the door. Then they loaded us, and we had to wait while paint dried. It's crazy lately.
Oh my gosh.
Never had to wait on a plane for paint to dry, but now I can check that one off the list.
All right, Tim, thanks for calling in. I appreciate it.
Move to
Thanks, guys. I'll
adjourn.
see you next week.
Move to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks all.